when you say that people were calling it gang signs when you were holding, because every team has their thing, right?
Yeah, 10th
I mean,
Planet
shit.
does the
Yeah, 10th
whatever
Planet does
thing.
the stupid fucking number thing. In Brazil, you watch a UFC in Brazil, the entire crowd is chanting, "You're gonna die." I remember when they were chanting a very homophobic term that I will not use. I was watching it with one of Marcelo's coaches from Brazil, and I go, "What are they chanting?" And he just goes, "You don't want to know," and like horrible things, right? That is dog whistle coded racism shit, like straight up. Calling the LI a gang sign. That's fucking nuts. I didn't even know that was happening.
Oh man, this is a gang of shit that goes on, and it motivates us to train harder. You know, it kind of made it more intense and more in your face and very combative.
Yeah,
to say the least. And it was kind of bulletin board material, the type of shit that you hear. And with everything that's going on now, it makes more sense to the kind of flack that we get and the kind of hate or just the neglect we have in the community.
I mean, I know we can talk about how it motivates you in the gym, but especially because you guys are known for like your kids program. And, you know, like I said, I sent a stranger to fucking you, and I've heard nothing but great things about you as a teacher and, you know, blah, blah, blah. I mean, does that shit fucking hurt too? Or because growing up Black in America, are you just used to hearing that kind of bullshit from white people? I mean, again, if you want to take it into what's happening now, we hear about Black people being gunned down for, you know, Tamir Rice is like one of the most heartbreaking examples where like he had a toy gun and he was fucking 13. Me, when I was 13, it's like, yeah, we had toy guns. We were fucking like breaking into people's houses and like running around the woods with guns. And I never had to, my parents never had to talk to me about that shit. If I hold up some finger sign, no one's going to say that that is a fucking gang sign. The two questions are, one, does it fucking just hurt, or are you used to it and try to use it to motivate you? And two, can you explain how there is a connection that even little things like calling a symbol a gang sign, how that does relate to the bigger issues of like kids not being able to walk with a fucking hoodie without being gunned down or play with a toy gun?
It always kind of hurts. It kind of stings. When I was a kid, it would make me sad. I always grew up in a pretty diverse area, but if it's hard enough going to school when you're different in any kind of way, whether
Right.
you know you're the punk kid or something's different. But it's really hurts when it's something that you can't control. So when you grow up, and like me, I grew up, my family pretty well off, and I grew up in predominantly white environments. And you know, you grow up and you deal with, you're not getting invited to parties, or rules are enforced differently for you. When you do certain things that the other kids do, you get punished, but the other kids do it. And so you grow up and you get that talk,
Right.
like, oh, you can't do what they do, or this is how you deal with the police, or there's certain things you can't do. Don't walk around with that hoodie on, or like, no, my parents wouldn't give me toy guns. And both my parents were in the Army, so you know, you want to play Army, man, but you can't, just for your safety, you can't be walking around with toy guns.
Right.
Now, before it would make me sad, now it infuriates me a lot, and it pushes me to train. And it's disappointing to see that in jiu-jitsu, because you would think that in a sport, it's a meritocracy. You would think that your skills would be good enough. Right. Being a good person is good enough. But these prejudices that everyone is born in, it's not going to be any different than in sports.
Yeah. Well, what do you think of in the last UFC, and Alex actually may be joining us on the show as well after this interview, Bruce Leroy, but him and Aljamain Sterling both had really good wins. And it was Alex who pointed out that the Black fighters really weren't getting the same kind of hype. You know, we're Drew and I are both friends with Chase, who Alex fought and beat. And Chase is kind of like, you know, this wonderkin, but Aljamain too, his white opponent was being hyped up a lot, like in the trailers and a lot of the countdown things. Do you think that that's a quiet bias? and that's just what, or do you think it's more calculated? Do you think it's the UFC just going, oh, this guy's more popular? Or do you think there is something there? And because that, when you were talking about your team, that kind of reminded me of what Alex was saying at the post-fight press conference.
To some, it might not exist, but studying the history of sports, let's take boxing, there's the phenomenon of the Great White Hope.
Right.
If you know about Jack Johnson, the first heavyweight champion, black heavyweight champion of the world, the whole sales pitch for the fights was that this Great White Hope would come in and they would say words about Jack Johnson like the dinge or, you know, just the Ethiopian. And they look, and if there's studies that show that people think that black athletes don't feel the same pain. And, you know, in America, they kind of look like the black man is like the boogeyman or something that's kind of strong, animalistic. And they have a juxtaposition with this Great White Hope, this kid who worked really hard and isn't athletically gifted and had to fight for everything he had to get. And for the most part, it kind of sells. In sports, you know, like boxing, there's the black fans, the Mexican fans, and then there's the Irish fans, the Italian fans.
Yeah.
But in the UFC, it's pretty overt to me.
Yeah. Well, and then when obviously there are tons of famous black athletes, but the second you see LeBron do something or Kobe do something for Trayvon, or the hatred that Colin Kaepernick gets, you know, then you're kind of like, oh, you're fine with black people when they're like winning your fat white ass some fucking money while you're sitting on the couch. But the second they're like, hey, don't be racist, you're like, get in your place, essentially, is what they're telling Kaepernick.
Yeah, they want you to shut up and dribble, when in the real world, like I said, you have to grow up and get that talk of how to survive, how that you're going to be treated unfairly. And you use UFC as an example. I'll give you a good example. Now, I'm not a MMA expert. I don't fight MMA, but I've watched MMA for decades. Tyron Woodley, in my opinion, probably has the best resume of a welterweight champion and had to fight the toughest fights, but he gets nothing but flack. You can't say that he didn't fight the toughest of the tough. You can't say that he wasn't an active champion, but I promise you, he will never get put in that same conversation as a GSP. Yeah. He kind of got disrespected in the media by the promoter and some of the language that was used about him. And it's unfortunate. And you'll notice that they're going to just sweep him under the rug. 2 losses. Right. He's not going to get that opportunity again. And he said it himself.
Right.
And the same thing in Jiu-Jitsu. There's no reason why Shane Hill-Taylor, my teammate Jamil, isn't recognized as one of the best guard players in the world. If I were to tell you guys some of the things that he would do in the room, in gi or no gi, against people that are 2 to 3 times his size, you'd be shocked.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
I probably wouldn't be shocked because I've seen him compete in the world level and it was fucking amazing. Like, you're right. There's a lot of people right now that have never even heard his name, which is ridiculous.
Well, and I was going to say, and then Drew, I'll shut the fuck up. I'm so sorry. But I was going to say, like, even for me, so a lot of my living comes from grappling, but I'm not like, I'm not watching grappling like every fucking day like a lot of people, because I'm not paying for Flow Grappling. And I remember Jamil had some standout like years ago, and like he'd pop up a little bit on Instagram, and I was like, God, I want to follow this guy. And then I just don't see it. Like the monopolies, the IBJJFs, the Flow Grappling, like they kind of control who we see.
For sure.
And you know, you can say, well, you got to make it to the top, and then but there are a lot of people getting a lot more attention who maybe aren't as deserving. Like, shit, man, Dylan was always nice to me, but I don't know when the last time Homeboy competed, and he has like 2 million fucking followers and is like throwing money in the air by convertibles. Like, I would rather see your teammates fighting and training. I would rather see you guys fucking train. Like, the training footage that comes out of your gym is so fucking spectacular and blows me away. So anyway, I just wanted to like give shout out to him because I just don't I don't see him popping up in my feed to even follow him. I'm gonna go follow him right now.
Yeah, definitely go follow him. The question I wanted to throw out there was, so last week, when the protests really were getting going and things were popping off all over the country, both Jamie and myself showed just honestly like pretty tame and appropriate support online for the Black Lives Matters movement.
Literally thought it was gonna be the least controversial thing me and
Right.
Drew ever did.
And we were again, just two white homies completely surprised by the amount of DMs that we got from random people thanking us because they weren't seeing any support from the jiu-jitsu community for this movement, period. Not necessarily people that were overtly against it, but just were conspicuously not for it. So I guess my question is, because since then we've had people accusing us like, oh, that's bullshit, you know, jiu-jitsu is for everyone and you're you know, virtue signaling and blah blah blah, like this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist. So I would like for you to express your opinions and your experiences in the jiu-jitsu community, because you've been at the highest level for so long. So it's something that I think if you were to speak to would lend more credence than a meme creator and a comedian, you know.
I would say that you guys were right on. I said the same thing on Facebook about a week and a half, almost 2 weeks now ago. It is very disappointing. I'm hearing stories of seeing guys with team decals being a part of like fascist, racist mobs counter protesting against the peaceful protests.
Yeah.
I'm seeing some of the most prominent members of the jiu-jitsu community saying not just insensitive things, but just out and out callous, rude, uneducated opinions. And the sad part is they're going unchecked. Very few people can really go out and say that. Even for me, I'm not dumb enough to go call these people out, but people that are watching can do the research. You might even follow some of these people.
Yeah.
And that is just speaks volumes. I can understand not saying anything in that you don't want to affect your money because it's a pandemic. People's ribs are touching. But for you to come out and say things that nobody asked you, or you didn't even think about it, you just wanted to chime in, it reinforced what I already thought about the scene and how it wasn't inclusive for people. And Jamie, you mentioned to me that people were contacting you saying they didn't feel comfortable training.
Yeah, so that's where I was gonna say that. First of all, really good point. That it's like no one even asked for them. Like, you don't need to say hateful shit. No one, like, I've never seen Gordon Ryan hit like a sick heel hook and be like, I wonder what his thoughts on Black Lives Matter are. Like, he could just do jujitsu and like be very famous. And what I was gonna say is, yeah, it started off with people writing Drew and I, and they were upset that their gym was quiet. And I will say too, shout out to my white people, I had a bunch of white students write me and they're like, I want to like ask my gym owner why they're not saying something. I'm disappointed that they're not saying anything. So and especially they'll listen to the show, because we in the last 2 episodes have weeded most people out, that there are a lot of allies in the jiu-jitsu community, which I think is really good. But the second Drew and I started speaking up a little louder, because I got mad, I made like an antagonistic video, I started getting a little louder. Now I probably have about 50 Instagram DMs from people who are sending me, here's some racist meme my coach sent me. Here's some bullshit they said on Facebook. We shouted out gyms last week who lost some customers for actually speaking out. And again, not for being like, kill whitey, but for literally saying what I think is an incredibly low bar, which is stop fucking killing black people. Like, that's it. And so there's like, and so here's, I think what Drew was kind of alluding to, and this is what I want to ask you about. Here's where I'll use the cool kid progressive word, the white privilege thing happens, where just because I thought jiu-jitsu was incredibly diverse, fucking Brazilian is in the title, right? Like, I've met more diverse people in jiu-jitsu than when I hung out with liberal journalists in fucking Brooklyn who were like white as shit. And so I never really thought of racism being a thing, because it is so, to me, it is so diverse. And obviously I'm never going to have anyone racist say anything to me. And now when this happens, yeah, seeing friends of mine, like I've lost friends, come out of the woodwork and not just be like, hey, why are they rioting? Not just say some like ignorant stuff that you can set straight by being like, oh, well, Black Lives Matter and the looters are different and Antifa is different. But like saying shit like, yeah, racism doesn't fucking exist. To me, and I'm sure less to you, was very, very shocking.
I wasn't really shocked. The only shocking thing was that they were crazy enough to come out and say the shit that they said.
Is that a relief to you that they did? That it's public in that way? Is it better in the light than it is in the shadows? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so yeah.
I think it's way better in the light because now we know for sure, we have receipts. And what I think these people fail to realize is like, they don't think that Black people in the Jiu-Jitsu community are educated enough or have the connections enough to really get them up out of here if we really wanted to. They don't know that Jiu-Jitsu is empowering for more than just them and their ideologies, and that there's a coalition of people that don't like that shit. And they're putting themselves on Front Street, and sad for them, they really think that they're getting away with it.
Yeah.
So that was shocking. It was that just shows how stupid how stupid they really are, and they don't have no foresight. Because I'd hate to break it to them, but Jiu-Jitsu is only getting more popular, more broad, and they're gonna hate it because I'm trying to do what others are trying to do is spread it to everyone. Like once sports start integrating, all that shit goes out the window. They're just gonna hate it more. Like, can you imagine in 10 to 15 years, once different stuff, like it's beyond just like white people predominantly or Brazilians doing jiu-jitsu, if we get some Black people more and more doing jiu-jitsu, if we can, because I try to convince kids like, yeah, you know, I played other sports growing up, but what are your chances of being LeBron James? What are your chances of being Patrick Mahomes? I can tell you this, you train with us, you could get your black belt in 4 years. You could win a world title with the right training. Or you could open a school and you can make money and you could teach more people in your community.
Yeah, you want to get 1 million followers? Just say that homeless people aren't people. And you'll skyrocket to the top. That was another Gordon Ryan joke. Only I am saying them. Yeah, man. You know, it's interesting because the more I think about it, whenever I talk about how diverse jiu-jitsu is, I'm really guilty of like, besides you guys and like friends and people who have like reached out to me this week, I can't think of a ton of like Black owned schools or is it not, and also when I think about like a lot of people who keep the lights on for the jiu-jitsu schools are kind of like privileged white people who come to the fucking morning classes or sign their kids up or, you know, whatever. Do you think that there should be more outreach? Is the Black community in jiu-jitsu as a whole kind of smaller than we might think it is?
It's actually bigger than a lot of people think.
Interesting.
We just don't get a lot of the publicity.
Right.
And I could rattle off a dozen Black-owned schools. I mean, we'd be all day, but I get contacts all the time for Black people that do jiu-jitsu. And I think the problem is that these school owners that go online and say these things, they don't know who the demographic is. They don't know. They really think that they have this same assumption that Black people aren't good at jiu-jitsu or don't do it. But I think it's a lot bigger than people think.
Yeah.
The network is growing every day. And this has actually galvanized a lot of my Black counterparts in mixed martial arts and jiu-jitsu and judo.
This is actually really exciting for me to hear because I know the last episode, Jamie, you kind of touched on there's a class issue to be talked about. We never really got into. I don't know if you want to broach that topic here. Now I'm sure you know more about it than I do, is like statistically, but having a sport where you need to be paying $170 a month just to show up and train, you know,
170. You didn't start in New York like I did, you fucking Canadian. I was like,
I'm just
God
saying,
damn, that sounds amazing.
there's a monetary bar that has to be subsumed before you can even put the fucking gi on, right? Which is going to,
let alone how much the fucking
include-
gi costs.
Sure. Well, I mean, just, it's not, it, as far as sports go, there's a bar, right? It's not like it's soccer where if you have a ball in a field, you can play. You know what I mean? So I'm actually encouraged hearing that that bar is trying to be overtaken for the sake of other athletes that may be the best in the world right now in the future, but they just aren't getting a chance.
Yeah, it's exciting times for me, and I'm starting to see with all the bad things that happen, the good things that come with it. Like we're getting close. We're getting closer. I'm talking to people, not just in the United States, but you know, the whole entire what we call the African diaspora.
Ooh, tell me more about that.
Well, you know, just like they have the Jewish diaspora, they have the Black diaspora, because the transatlantic slave trade, we're all over the place. I know people down in Brazil, like some of the best jiu-jitsu fighters. That's the sad part about this. Some of the best jiu-jitsu fighters ever, the most influential, the ones that coached some of these white grapplers are Black. Terere,
yeah.
Terere is considered, if he were to come to the United States, he looks like my cousin. He's darker than most of my family. You know,
a lot of people in this generation don't even know who that is. He's basically the Michael Jordan of the sport back in the 90s.
Yeah, he's very influential. But it's good for me to get in contact with these people. You know, there's the Lionheart Initiative that's spreading jiu-jitsu all throughout Africa. I'm trying to make it so people can train even in my local community. A few years ago when the Baltimore riots happened, I started teaching more with this. It was kind of like a church-related program where I would teach kids in Baltimore. And then I'm getting hit up from a lot of prominent coaches and athletes that say, hey, we need to come together and have a voice and speak out. And I'm seeing people that aren't just Black people, but I have women that contact me and they tell me they're not feeling comfortable and they're upset. And, you know, like if you think about it, there's a lot of LGBTQ people that do jiu-jitsu too. And underprivileged or underserved communities, we're all coming together and saying like, yo, like, this ain't right.
Yeah.
If you're going to say this about someone that they're talking about someone that just died, and you're saying all that, and like, okay, well, that's their voice, but where's our voice? And then we started communicating, and I think it's time for us to really stand up and come together.
Fuck yeah, man. And I've been discovering so many new amazing people because there isn't really like a central list. A couple people asked me and Drew, like, put together a list. There isn't like a list of like schools that aren't fucking douchebags. And so I've been, anybody who's reached out to me wanting to quit, women, so many fucking Black people, I'm like Googling their towns, and then I'm going to the fucking schools, and then I'm going to the Instagram, and then you see a little black square and you go, okay, fucking they seem fine for now, I don't know. And I think that what I'm really hoping is that this does amplify a lot of these good places. Cause man, like a lot of us got into jiu-jitsu not because we wanted to like beat people up, but because we were fucking nerds and we wanted a community of outcasts and misfits. And so to hear that these places that should be sanctuaries are making gay people uncomfortable, or making Black people uncomfortable, or making women uncomfortable, it's so fucking heartbreaking. It's like the murderer was in the house the whole time scene in a fucking movie where it's like, fuck man, like I thought we were supposed to be the good guys. I thought we were the ones who, if we see someone getting their fucking throat crushed, we jump in. We don't go and just blindly defend authority and suddenly become these like, honestly, like scared fucking cowards, you know?
It hurt seeing that stuff because I said on my show, like, we watched someone get bullied to death, and the first thing some of these prominent people says is, let's shoot looters.
Yes. Right.
Let's shoot looters. Like, shoot loot. Like, let's dissect that a little bit, okay? You bypass the fact that you saw a murder And we can all agree, anybody with sense would say that that was a modern day lynching, and it was a violation.
100%.
We saw the president of the United States tear gas peaceful protesters. One of my teammates was out there marching.
Oh, wow.
She got shot up with rubber bullets.
Jeez.
She got lit up. She's lucky she didn't lose her eye. She's lucky that she's not maimed for life.
Yep.
And so you bypass that, but you want to talk about shooting people, not defending property, just shooting people. And it's in this coded language.
Right.
Because you go out there and you look, how can you tell who's a looter? Just like when they say it's Antifa, how can you tell it's Antifa? How can you tell it's a terrorist? So you're assisting in the vilification of people that are peacefully protesting. You're not trying to offer any kind of solution to the problems. You're not communicating to the people that go to the gym that may not be black, but could be a woman, could be a person that doesn't identify with that bullshit, and you're alienating them. And it's just some bullying bullshit. And I did jujitsu because I didn't want to deal with racist bullies. I didn't want to deal with being victimized. Like, I went to a school that, I mean, for lack of a better term, was racist as shit. They would have like little sneaky like dress code things, like say like, oh, you can't have this type of hairstyle, like dreads are considered inappropriate, but you had these other dudes with like long fucked up hair, looked unkempt, and I got picked on relentlessly a lot of my life. And I did jujitsu to empower myself, and I teach jujitsu mainly for helping someone that was like me, because I went from a pencil neck geek that couldn't climb the rope at the gym to winning world titles, all because someone cared enough and had enough compassion to bring me up. Like, I was 16 years old in a gym full of grown-ass men, and they looked after me, and they saw something in me, and they didn't care where I was from, what I looked like, and they helped me out. And it goes against the martial arts creed. If we want jiu-jitsu to grow, we have to be inclusive. We have to kill that shit. Because I'm looking on the front page of Bloody Elbow. Look who's the most comments. Like 10 to 15 times more comments about it. And that's what the world's going to see. That's the second, I think the second biggest martial arts MMA blog in the world. And the biggest, one of the biggest things in jiu-jitsu is getting called out for being a piece of shit.
Yeah. For anyone who didn't see, the headline is, it's something like Flow Grappling says they support Black Lives Matter, but pays Gordon Ryan. Here's all of Gordon Ryan's like racist comments. Yeah, man. And like, you know, to anyone who is getting fucking defensive, which I've seen a lot of, and are like, but looters aren't good. It's like, right. But I think what Tim said is so important, and what I beg you guys to focus on, which is, but they're bypassing, literally, we all watched a murder.
Yeah.
Like, that's fucked up. Like, we shouldn't have to see a murder, and we watched it. And so it's very suspicious when you bypass the tear gassing, when you bypass the countless murders of innocent Black people by the people who are protected to, or paid to protect us. And then suddenly you just care about the looting. It's like, oh, you don't actually care about crime. I mean, fuck, man. So many of these people who suddenly care about law and order are like posting like fucking like smoking weed before jujitsu. And suddenly it's like, now you care about the fucking law? Like, it's such garbage. And that's where I would just like really ask them to investigate, like, why aren't you incredibly upset by witnessing a murder? Why are you more upset? Is it because you've never had to be in that position? You know how many times I've been pulled over, stoned by the police? A lot. You know how many times I feared for my life? Fucking never. But I think a lot of these people, they're like, well, I own a small business. It's like, right, but we should be able to empathize with fucking all of it. Like, all of it. You can say looting is bad, and you can also say fucking institutionalized racism is bad.
I think they're afraid of saying that. Oh, I'm sorry, Drew.
Oh, no, you go for it.
I think they're afraid to say something partly because look who does jujitsu. Look who it's marketed to. From the very beginning, back in Brazil, think about who was it marketed to. Think about how hard it was for the people in the favelas or people of color to even learn jujitsu over there.
Whoa, I never thought about
do you want to talk about the history there a bit? Because again, a lot of people that are new to the sport may not even recognize that. It's like the Gracies teaching jiu-jitsu back in Brazil was to the rich people in, you know, the the Baja area of
God, I
Rio
forgot
de
about
Janeiro, whereas you talk about Tereré and him bringing jiu-jitsu into the favelas, coming out of the favelas himself. Like, that's a very different socioeconomic position to be doing the same thing from. Was there a reason there was a divergence there, and is that something that we can learn from?
I'm not exactly sure. I'm always doing research about it too. I just spoke with Finfo, who's one of Teddy's students, about it. And all I can really speak on it is that I think class and race is in part of our society, and it's a micro, and it's you see the same thing in sports. So of course we're going to have those same issues.
Mm.
I think that's basically, you know, the gist of it. I don't really know about too much about the history that I can speak on it, but I will say that there are a lot of police officers that do jujitsu. A lot of gyms give police officer discounts. So
like all of them do.
yeah, so you're not gonna go out on a limb and say something that to us is not controversial, but to them it might fuck up their bottom line.
Yeah,
That's a really fucking good point.
Just by saying anything, I mean, it's gotten to the point now where you go online, if you say like there's a problem and that we should even reform how police do their job, it's a huge shit show.
Yeah.
So if you're a gym owner that has, I mean, you don't want to piss off your customers. So a lot of people will be silent about it, but they could also feel the same way, which is very troubling.
I'd be really interested to get your point of view on the idea of better jujitsu training for police officers. So there's this thing going around right now. I know a bunch of schools are getting behind it. Ryan Hoover was one of the ones who started it, where they'd say they're going to allow police officers to train for free until they get their blue belt, in an effort to try to get people better trained when it comes to controlling people without having to use excessive force.
I think that when gym owners or schools say that, they're just trying to get more money, or they're trying to get bigger publicity. Because to be honest, if you're a hateful person and a murderer, teaching you jujitsu is only going to make you more efficient.
Yeah.
That's like saying if Jeffrey Dahmer knew how to do a barambolo, there wouldn't be body parts in his freezer. It would just make it way easier for him to kill people.
Yeah. And it would have been far more boring.
Yeah. I just don't think it's a training issue, because what you see that they do on there's no training for that. A knee on neck, for you to be able to do knee on neck in somebody in jiu-jitsu, they'd have to be completely incapacitated, or you're jumping them.
Yeah.
So even if they knew, they totally bypassed any jiu-jitsu just to beat the hell out of him.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't see how that's going to make it any better.
Yeah,
does that extend to them wanting to make chokeholds illegal in your mind? Is that just not going to help?
I mean, chokeholds have been illegal in New York City for ages. Just because you make it illegal doesn't mean that you can't still do it and get away with it.
Yeah. Yeah, and Drew, I haven't heard about that initiative, and like, to me, it's like, yeah, the guy who fucking strangled Eric Gardner to death in New York, the guy who fucking killed George Floyd, it's like, yeah, that wasn't technique. You know what I mean? Like, he was ripped out of his fucking car at the get-go. I mean, they need fucking better mental health fucking screenings, more accountability. But yeah, that I feel like I would honestly rather, it's like, if you're gonna let people train for free, it's like, how about like the fucking black kids who can't afford to train? How about the communities that like we want to like lift up, and not like, well, these guys are doing a lot of murders, let's give them the old murderer discount and hopefully it'll like tone them down a bit. It's like, yeah, the people who are committing these murders, like, it wasn't a fucking technical question.
It's like from within, kind of. You know,
yeah.
But I get why they would do it. I think it's a little misguided. I think it's a Band-Aid on a gun, on a bullet wound. You know, at the end of the day, we have to make better people.
Yeah.
we have to change our outlook. And I'm not a politician. I don't want to be a politician. I don't have the stomach for it, but I can grapple my ass off. I've been teaching jiu-jitsu since I was about 17, 18 years old. And I think that what I can do is spread the gospel of jiu-jitsu, or at least what it's supposed to mean, and be a good person. And I'm going to keep speaking out because kids watch this shit, man. Like, a lot of the young kids listen to me. I teach young kids. And when I was growing up, I used to always wonder, how come Michael Jordan doesn't say something?
Mm.
Why is it that the loudest people are so fucking wrong and like just
Right.
taking it so far left, why isn't it? So I kind of took it upon myself to say something, but also I want to teach people and be an example. That's the best thing I could say that for us to do in jiu-jitsu is be a good example of what a good person is.
Who should we be holding account? Like, okay, so moving forward, when we're thinking of things to do, right? There's obviously supporting Black athletes, not because it's some fucking, just because like they're Black and we feel, but because they're good fucking athletes who aren't getting the screen time that a lot of other people are. But also, are there establishments that we should also be holding accountable? And I'm not just talking about like racist schools, but like, should we also be trying to get the fucking flow grapplings and places like that to give more of a voice to you, and not just like every day it's like fucking like Gordon Ryan. Like, do we need to hold our institutions accountable, or are you more of the mind, fuck these institutions, kill the masters, let's just all lift up the good ones? And just sort of like, someone called Drew and I show the anti-bro show the other day, and I'm like, all right, man, maybe we'll be part of like this fucking like other squad where it's like, if you don't want to be fucking hateful and you just love jiu-jitsu and you want to be a decent person, it's like, cool, we got a bunch of people fucking over here too. What would you ask of our listeners to kind of start doing, or ways to start thinking?
Well, if you, like Joey Diaz says, you got to hit their pockets.
Yeah.
Coco, yeah, you got to hit their pockets.
Yeah.
If you feel as though you're at an academy or you're around people that are just scumbags, you don't have to train there. Find a gym, shop around. You shouldn't feel forced to train somewhere that you want to train. I always say I don't want to be somewhere that I'm not welcome. So if you feel as though you're not welcome, feel free to go somewhere where you are. If you like a certain athlete, like if you like me, you can listen to my podcast.
Plug the podcast. I'm going to subscribe to.
Yes, you can go to BJJGoons podcast and listen to me, like, share, and subscribe. You can go to favelajujitsu.com and buy my merch, or buy Favela Jiu-Jitsu's merch, because they're doing great. They have a social project down in Brazil helping other Black kids, trying to build up the next athletes.
Nice.
You can support me. Go to my website, Tim Spriggs BJJ. Learn about my virtual coaching program. You can go and follow your favorite athlete on Instagram. Buy their merch. Buy their instructionals when they have an instructional. We don't need the tired system, because I'm gonna tell you, these institutions aren't gonna change because we're mad. They already have their set fan base. They're serving the masters that they serve. So it's up to us, like you, Jamie, you, Drew, you guys have this platform. Pump that platform. It's us to network. So if you want to be on my show, I'll be on your show. Share that shit. Speak up, speak out, because we can't rely on these people treating us like we're human beings if, as they're showing us, they don't look at us as such.
Are you almost kind of changing? And then before we go, I really want to ask you about the mental coaching too, because I think it's so fucking important. But is that what you're kind of like, are you sort of saying too, like for the athletes, instead of trying to appease these kind of bigger racist people and like shit talking or calling them out, you would just rather build up a new generation of other people and just show instead of tell? and just go fucking kill it in competitions, build up your own stuff, start your podcast, support each other, blah, blah, blah. Are you more interested in that than you are like getting into like fucking Instagram wars?
Absolutely. I think it's a waste of time. And I know from my personal experience, when I look up to people or I like someone's movement, they go further when they start their own thing. Like I listen to music a lot, and you guys know Odd Future?
No,
Yeah,
tell me about them.
yeah. It
Okay,
fucking,
so Odd Future would probably be the most influential music group and like the most skilled we've seen since like the Wu-Tang Clan in music, I would argue. Like they're deep. Like if you're like Frank Ocean, like if I were to tell you some of these people, like, oh, they all started as teenagers in California.
it was like Tyler the Creator and like not just artists, but like weird outside the box artists, like Tyler the Creator, who now, if you guys don't know, like he has a fucking like cartoon on Adult Swim. Like he's fucking sober. Like he doesn't smoke weed or he's just like this fucking weird savant and has just done so much. So it was like, again, what we were talking about Jiu-Jitsu should be. It was like the weirdos and outcasts.
Yeah, it sounds like my jam.
Yeah, and instead of hating on each other, they like keep talking about it. I'm so curious.
So it was a network. It was about 12 guys. And if you look at modern day music, they changed it completely. Like the sound, everything, DIY. These guys are millionaires now. But if they had sat, they would go on songs and beef with famous blogs, famous magazines. But now those magazines are defunct. Those blogs don't have the clout. They have the respect. They have the critical acclaim. But it was because they galvanized their own scene. They rounded up their own troops. They had people from all walks of life that fucked with their movement, and they made it their own. And now everyone else has to bow down to them. They can say no. You know, they don't have to shine shoes. They don't have to kiss ass, and they made it their own. And that's what I'm encouraging anyone that's listening this to do. If you feel as though your voice isn't heard, represent your voice. Link up with like-minded people. Take everybody's skills, whether you're a great grappler or you're a great videographer or you have a podcast or you are good with computers, you can help each other. Right. That's what I'm suggesting that we do, because that's the only way that you can fight it. If you're going to try to change the system, it's never going to work, or you're going to be co-opted, or you're going to end up having to sell out or make concessions. Yeah. But the way the world is now, you can create your own universe. Mm-hmm. You can take a stand, and then eventually like-minded people will find their way to you.
I want to make the jiu-jitsu version so bad of it, because I've had like female world champions reach out to me, like me and Drew being on the same fucking page about it. God, Drew, that would have been a nightmare, right? If one of us during this found out the other one was racist. Yeah. like we have these crazy platforms, and yeah, you're right, we all bring different skills, and I think everyone listening brings different skills. And I just want to shout out to the people who have like left their fucking gyms, because it's really scary, man. Like you walk into a jiu-jitsu gym, and especially like the white and blue belts who are like, fuck this. Like that's like a brave fucking move.
Yeah, especially if you're a white or a blue belt, you've been working so hard to try to get that next stripe. You know, you're willing to sacrifice a lot of your own morals so that your teacher thinks that you're good enough to get the next stripe. You know what I mean? Like it's and then you know, if you go to another school, you got to prove who you are from the ground up again, right?
Oh, and not only that, but you're going up to the guy you're calling racist, you know, can kick your ass because he has before. So like fucking what moves? Okay, last thing for me, talk about this mental coaching, because this mindset coaching that you're doing, because I remember when COVID started, I started being like, everybody stop fucking berimboloing chairs and ask your coaches if they're doing mindset stuff, because you know, I'm at the point, I've done jiu-jitsu long enough where like, I hate to admit this, but like there are some classes I space out and I'm like, I just want to roll, blah, blah, blah. Some of the things that have affected me the most in the last 10 years were 5-minute conversations I had with grapplers that I really look up to, that would tell me to like get off my ass and like do this a little differently or do that a little differently. And I think people should be, especially while we're still quarantined, taking advantage of this. What made you want to start it, and what are you kind of bringing to the table for anyone who's interested in contacting you about mindset coaching? Because I'm like a step away from moving to fucking Baltimore to train with you after this episode.
Well, I do I don't do so much mindset. I make mind maps, but I also do
Oh,
virtual
sick.
coaching.
Yeah, yeah.
So the way I look at jujitsu is it's a linear thing. No matter how we like to slice it, the match starts and ends, and ideally in a submission. When I first started doing jujitsu, I'd watch film on all the greats. I'd watch Hadra, Shanji, Jacare. Let's take Hadra, for example. He probably only does about 5 different techniques. He's mastered them. So I looked at his game plan. I looked at what he does. So when I make a mind map for someone, I watch as many of their matches as I can, and I narrow down about a handful of their best techniques, positions, and submissions that
Cool.
they attempt. Every match starts from the feet, so the mind map starts from the feet, and I explain what grips, and I look at what grips they do. Like, for instance, me, cross collar, same side sleeve. I never pull, so if I were to make a mind map for myself, pulling would not be in that mind map. It would go from the grips that I have on the feet to the takedowns that I do. From the takedowns, it branches off to the positions we land in. Then it branches off into the grips that I have and what attacks I'm going to do in each position. Now, after the pass, let's say I'm on top, I only do about 1 or 2 passes. Then
Okay, me too.
I branch off into the submissions that I do from those positions that I pass to. And I only pass to about 1 or 2 different positions. So already all the minutia, all the different types of techniques in jiu-jitsu are narrowed down to exactly what I do most of the time, gives me the best results. So from the start of the match to my ideal positions and ideal submissions, that is my mind map. And it can shorten how much drilling that you have to do as far as what you drill.
So,
So
so
I'm not,
you watch somebody's matches, and you basically offer to take the noise out of their system and focus on what's working.
absolutely.
Oh, it's so fucking cool.
Yes, I've done it for a few people. I mean, I started doing match breakdowns on my Instagram. I'm starting to put it on my YouTube. And this thing that I always say is no scrambles are ever random.
Mm.
I
If you
love
look
that.
at Levi Jones Leary, I can tell you, I don't even have to see, I can see a black silhouette of him. I know what he's going to do. I know that he's going to use his right leg as a distancer in De La Hiva to kick your leg and make you do a split. Then he's going to invert. If he can't invert, he's going to scoop out, matrix hook, go to your back. Those are only one position that he does primarily, and he's always going to try to go to it. I could probably mind map the best grapplers in the world, break down their techniques, and tell you exactly what they're going to do, when they're going to do, what grips they're going to have. And that's
Yeah.
from years of training.
Well, and for the white and blue belts listening, this is so interesting because there was part of me when I was at Henzo's for a couple years in LA, I was actually like match wise, competition wise in the training room was doing as good as ever, but I felt like stupid sometimes watching some of the very technical, very good instruction. And I love that I came up under Marcelo because Marcelo's very like, this is the side we're going to pass to. So this is the side, like he only drills his good side. He doesn't do moves that were good, that he's not good at. And there was part of me when I went to other schools that I was like, oh, should I have not done that? Should I, because I still have my very, like, I have the same, like, knee cut guillotine. Like, that's my game. And I think there are a lot of blue belts and white belt, but now I'm actually seeing how fucking lucky I am to have come up that way, where I think there are a lot of people, it's like, look, basics, defenses, yeah, you want to learn everything. But I think a lot of white and blue belts, even purple belts, are just like, I need to learn as many moves as possible. And whatever the new game is, whatever the new fad is, watch as many YouTube videos as possible. Whereas you're saying there's another path, which is get to the things you're already good at as many ways as humanly possible.
For sure. When the fundamentals all come into play with the scrambles, but the scrambles are going to happen in the spots that you dictate.
Right.
So it all comes together. I say this all the time. My offense and what I do is better than anybody's defense. I can tell you right now, if I get a knee cut position on anyone, I will pass their guard. When I fought Buchecha ADCC, he finished me, but I knee cut pass because I know that if I get into the knee cut position, I can pass. And if I can keep someone in my mind map, in my web of attacks, I don't care how great they are, they're going to lose. They could be doing jiu-jitsu for 10, 15, 20 years. If I have 10,000 reps of this one position or of this entry and this series of attacks from let's say mount or back mount, I'm not going to lose. That's how Master Lloyd was able to help us get so good so fast.
Nice.
He's going to teach us the fundamentals, and he's going to go hard on the fundamentals. But notice how everyone's a little bit different. But when we get there, we get there. If Jamil has your sleeve and he goes lasso, you're done. If Muhammad gets you in that half guard that he does, he's going to sweep you. If Malachi puts you in closed guard, you're going to sleep, and so on and so forth.
That's awesome, man. I've got a student who's about a purple belt level, and he wants to make an ADCC trials run. And he told me, like, I'm putting my faith in you to build my game out for this. I'm going to actually hook him up with your website, I think, so that you can kind of help me help him to get his best moves figured out before he needs to know, for the trials.
Yeah, send them my way. Like, I have a Flow account. It's an investment now because I can watch everybody's matches because they have everything on there. So that's what I do. And yeah, please send them my way. I'll be more than happy to help them.
Nice.
It's not like I have anywhere to go. We're still locked out over here.
Well, we'll send everybody over there. And I just want to say this again, which is that so much of the shit, so many people make it seem like right now, like Black people are asking for so much. And it is literally and I will just say this as like from a white person to the white people listening, like, to me, it just sounds like it's equality. It's not having to fear for their fucking lives. It's be able to have their own businesses without, being told that it's coded gang violence when you're trying to teach kids how to fucking defend themselves. So, like, I'm not promoting anybody because of their skin color and because I feel bad. I'm promoting them because there's a lot of really talented people who have been buried by, decades of systematic oppression, but like, as we all saw in the last couple weeks, racism within the jiu-jitsu community. There's no fucking denying it after we saw some of these comments that were made from fucking on my page, publicly, some of the biggest people in the sport. And the way that we can fight against that is by lifting up good people who are trying to do good things. And that is what I would ask everybody to do with Spriggs.
Yeah, all anyone wants is to be able to live with dignity and be able to be who they want to be without people shitting on them.
Sure.
Yeah.
Whether you're a woman, whether you're a gay person, trans, if you're Black, white, I always felt, and like my family is pretty diverse as well. And I just wish people could just look at us for our jujitsu and the things we do well and whether or not we're a good person. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, we're not there yet, but we're all trying to do our part. Yeah. I show love to everyone that shows love to me, and if you are a hater, peace and blessings to you. And I hope whatever hate is in your heart can turn into love, and you find some kind of happiness within you, so you don't have to put that negative energy out there.
Seriously,
that's beautiful. Well, man, it was an absolute pleasure to have you on here. Thanks so much for giving us your time.
Yeah, thank you for letting me stumble through my like white person theories too. I appreciate it.
Hey, we need that open dialogue, man. If we don't talk, if we don't, say our piece, there's not going to be any progress.
Totally. Well, listen, I'm going to plan a trip out there, dude. But we'll let you know when this is up, and then we'll hype the shit out of it. We'll clip it up for you.
All right, man. Peace out.
All right, pal. Thank you, brother. Thanks for everything you're doing.
Peace.
See ya.